there is this idea, there is this feel, especially among the younger generations, that that anything confrontational.
So when Vadi says that there is a feel that anything confrontational is not nice, I mean, what he's speaking of is he's speaking of the many subjects in our day and age that offends or that goes against our feelings, that goes against our emotions. I mean, let's agree that we live in a culture that is all about acceptance. I mean, God is love. I mean, do what makes you feel good. I mean, we have abandoned this book and set our own boundaries. Sadly, not only has secular society done this, but the church has really joined in. I mean, some of those subjects that Vadi's talking about include homosexuality, they include gay marriage, they include abortion. I mean, these topics, they're hard to discuss. Why? Because our opinion of these topics, they cause division. Many don't have the backbone to talk about these topics, you know, out of fear of losing friends, out of fear of losing followers, or in this church world, I mean, fear of losing the congregation.
There is an 11th commandment. The 11th commandment is thou shalt be nice. And we don't believe the other 10, okay? We don't believe the other 10. And so anything that's just not nice, and nice is defined as weak, soft, mealy-mouthed, afraid, cowardly.
So what did Jesus say about being cowardly? Well, Revelation 21 says the cowardly will be thrown into the lake of fire. Matthew 7 says that many will come to me saying blah, 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 and blah, 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 and I will say, depart from me, I never knew you. Yes, those who were afraid to stand for truth, those who watered down my message and led many astray, get away from me. I mean, Mark 4 speaks of people falling away when trials and tribulations and disagreements come. Yes, when it's time to stand for truth, the cowardly will fall away. So what are you afraid of? I mean, Jesus said it best in Matthew 10. Why be afraid of man? Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both your body and your soul and cast you into hell.
You know, that's the way we define niceness in Christianity. And anything that's sort of confrontational and that would dare to say that someone is wrong, it's just not acceptable. This is why pastors stand up today, and when they preach on a topic that's controversial, their message usually dies the death of 1,000 qualifications. I mean, think about it. You will not hear a guy stand up, for the most part, and preach on the issue of homosexuality without 15 minutes of justification. Now, I love homosexuals. I have friends who are homosexuals. I am not here to say, you know, just say what the book says.
So it's this book, the book of truth, absolute truth, but it offends our hearts. It offends our minds. Why? Because it shows us our sinfulness. It shows us how dirty we are. It's when we read this that we realize that we can't get away with that lawlessness. And so our junk is exposed, and what ends up happening is we just don't open the book. And then we blame the fact that it's too hard to understand and it's just not really for us. And instead of owning the fact that the reason it's not being opened is because we just don't want to confront our sin. Look, it's black and white. There's no gray area with God. I mean, God has given us boundaries of protection, and we would rather take what we think we know and stretch the boundaries, and then we call it acceptance. And then we justify it by saying that we're being loving. No, if we were being loving, we would speak God's words. My friends, this book is truth. It is a lion. It doesn't need you to defend it. Just let it out of the cage, and it will do what it does.
Yeah, but people will be offended and letters will come in. And here's what those letters will say, essentially. I'm more offended by the fact that you confronted that sin than I am that sin offends God. This is where we live today, especially in younger generations. And so the idea of apologetics, the idea of confrontation, the idea of I'm right, you're wrong, that just doesn't sit well with us.
So we avoid offending people in fear of causing strife, and what we're actually doing is leading people away from truth. I mean, we would rather offend God than offend people. I mean, think about this. Do you realize that our lack of boldness in this area to share truth is actually just sending more people to hell. So instead of being bold and speaking truth, I mean, at times we sugarcoat the truth just to tickle the ears of people and make them feel good about themselves. I mean, there's nothing in this book that should make you feel good other than the gospel, which is that Jesus came and died for you and me, and by his grace alone, we can be saved. I mean, that's it. That's the only good news. The book is supposed to filter out the mess in our lives to make us realize who we are, not to make us feel good.
We don't often gauge the rightness or wrongness of things by the facts that are presented, but instead we tend to gauge the rightness and wrongness of things based on the emotions that we experience when they're presented. That was powerful. That was awesome. Well, did you recognize that it was heretical? You're so judgmental. Here's how these two things work together, right?
Never allow your emotions to lead you. Your emotions are a roller coaster ride that you really don't want to be on. Up and down, constantly. And so instead of being on this roller coaster ride and being led by your emotions, we need to be led by God. And how do we do that? Well, it's simple. We open the truth. We open God's word. It's very black and white. He gives us the instructions. We just need to be willing to be led by him. We just need to be willing to surrender.